You are listening to the Icehouse Podcast, hosting conversations with gritty Kiwi business owners and leaders and industry-leading minds.
Welcome to the Icehouse Podcast. My name's Priya and I'm the marketing coordinator at the Icehouse. Today I'm joined by Lizzie from Glorious, who are one of our residents at the Icehouse Coworking space. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Priya.
Cool. So we kick things off with rapid fire. And so the first question I'd like to ask you is, what's your coffee order?
I'm like the most basic Auckland gal. I'm always an oat flat white. Can't go wrong. Red Rabbit.
Yeah.
Best coffee in Auckland. But yeah, oat flat white.
It's pretty popular now, oat flat white.
I know. I think
yeah.
it's really come through.
Yeah.
It's outbeaten the soys of the world. There's no more almond milk on the table.
Yeah.
Coconut's out. Macadamia's in.
Oat is in.
Oat is the one, 100%.
Love it. The next question is, when are you most productive?
I feel like that's such a good question because I really enjoy the mornings in the Icehouse when there's not really many people here.
Yeah.
Kind of coming into the Icehouse when it was like just coming out of the pandemic. It was so peaceful. So probably like early morning, late night, sometimes the afternoon. But the nature of my job means I work kind of a lot of different hours.
Yeah.
So the fringes of the day.
Yeah, and we'll get into your job a little bit more later. I'm really excited for that.
Thank you.
When you were younger, what kind of job did you dream of having when you grew up?
It's so funny, but I traveled a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
And so air hostess was my dream role
Nice.
forever.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to be an explorer.
Yeah.
So I went to uni and did environmental science thinking that I'd be some kind of, expedition leader. But I am, not that anymore.
That's pretty cool though. I haven't actually heard anyone say that they wanted to be an explorer. I quite like that.
Yeah.
What was your first job?
So I started picking flowers when I was like 10 or 11 just for some pocket money. And then I was really in hospitality until I was about 20. Mm-hmm. Then I managed a hair salon. And then I baked bagels in a French and English bookstore in Berlin for a year.
A bookstore?
Yeah. So they only sold French. Well, they obviously sold German books as well, but they sold French and English books. And then when I got to New Zealand, so probably my first like proper job, where I was on salary was at Big Day Out, CRS Music. So I was part of their team organizing the festival in New Zealand. And then I went on to work at Sony Music.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And what's your favorite thing to do when you're not working?
To be honest, I just love, and the beauty of New Zealand is the beach. You know, I love the ocean. I love being by the water. I grew up with my dad surfing. My husband surfs now. And I just think it's just such an amazing way to be part of the world and
awesome.
I love
it's a good place
swimming.
in the world to be able to do that, eh?
100%. It's so beautiful here, and we just feel very, very lucky to be able to go to the beach kind of every day after work. And
cool. That's awesome. Well, following on from that, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Who's Lizzie?
Okay, well, I am Lizzie Smith. I was born in New Zealand, but I grew up in Samoa. Then when we came back from Samoa, my mum and I moved over to the UK, and I really spent most of my childhood and early adulthood in Cornwall in the UK. I studied environmental science at uni, as I said, following a month-long trip to Antarctica. So my mum wanted to do something really special for her birthday once. We went to Antarctica. I got back and I was just like so enamored by the sheer vastness of it all. And I was like, I want to do that. Studied in London. London changed my whole life, my perspective on the world. I met the most amazing people. And then I moved to Berlin for a year. As I said, like worked in this French and English bookstore, made bagels for this beautiful Jewish woman. Yeah. And then I ended up coming to New Zealand thinking that I'd be here for 6 months. Yeah. And just loved it. Like as most people do. They're like, oh, just, go down, do a job for a little while. And I'm lucky that I've got dual nationality, so I have the flexibility of both. Yeah. But I landed a job at Sony Music New Zealand in their publicity and marketing department, and I just fell in love with music. And I've always loved music. I mean, I've been to Glastonbury 15 times. I've always gone since I was a kid, and just never really knew that you could do that for a living, like work in music and listen to music every day and meet artists and work with artists. And so that just, my passion became my profession, and I loved that.
Awesome.
And it let me travel. You know, I mean, I think having, my dad lives in New Zealand, my mum lives in the UK, so I'm always kind of going back and forth. So it allowed me to be really flexible and fluid with where I was working. And I think that, like, me in a nutshell is just kind of always saying yes. I think I've been so lucky that I've had some incredible opportunities come my way, and never really been afraid to say, oh, let's give it a try, because what started as an environmental science degree is now working in a completely different world. And I think it's, and I've got beautiful friends, an incredible family. My mum just left. She came over here from the UK, and so just, very loved, very social. I don't think you can be in marketing if you're not social, to be honest, if you're not across it all. I think that's kind of my short life in a nutshell.
No, that's
31
amazing.
years.
Love it. That's awesome. And as I mentioned earlier, you work at Glorious, or one of our co-working residents. Could you tell us who Glorious are and what they do? Absolutely.
So Glorious is a digital art marketplace and studio. I say digital art over NFT because we're really trying to move away from the word NFT. I think it's such a describer of the technology rather than the product. My boss, Tim Harper, when I was coming into the role, described it as, if you were selling a CD player, you don't need to know how the CD player works. You just need to know that it plays CDs, right? And so Glorious works with some of New Zealand's finest artists and brings them into the Web3 realm. So we work with Ruben Patterson, Carl Morn, the Rita Angus estate, the Gordon Walters estate. We just recently did a beautiful Heather Straka release. And so the foundations of the business are really in fine art. From there, we've been able to connect with global institutions like Wimbledon and the Nelson Mandela Foundation to kind of guide them into the Web3 world. And last year, we were really lucky to celebrate 100 years of Centre Court with Wimbledon. And so we created a collection that centered on the each decade that made up the 100 years, and created these stunning images out of the Wimbledon archival imagery and made them into artworks and sold them on the blockchain as part of our marketplace. And we sold out. I mean, we had 1,000 artworks available, 40,000 people registered to buy them. So we knew it was going to be a sellout, but we just didn't really understand how much interest there would be. And so Glorious has really become this leader, this kind of thought leader, this educator in the space. And we sit on a really interesting end of the spectrum for Web3 and NFTs. It's really kind of luxury, but also something that you'd be proud to put on your wall. And that's really, every time that we go out for a release, we say, would you want to put this on your wall? Would you, you don't want to sell it on. You want to sit there in your living room and go, wow, that's a beautiful piece of art. And so every time we consider a piece of artwork that we're putting on our marketplace, that's kind of the first step.
Cool. So I'm kind of going off script here, but the digital artwork that Glorious puts on the marketplace, is that created by people in your team, or do you guys go out to artists?
Sometimes. So, when you look at the Carl Morn piece, he painted that and we helped him digitize it. And so the day version of that artwork is an original artwork. However, Carl wanted to have a night version, and so we created this video transition from day to night. And so it was a real collaborative effort. Heather Straka is another amazing example of that, where she already had these stunning artworks that she'd photographed and put together and edited, but we animated them and made them digitally enhanced. So on the fine art side of things, we assist the artists in making them look brilliant for your screen. When it comes to the global institution, so for Wimbledon, it was our team and another team with Daylight that we worked with to create the 10 artworks for the Centenary Collection. It's the same with the Nelson Mandela Foundation. The lead artwork from there, we've worked with Blackwell and Ruth, who are an incredible Auckland-based publisher, and they've assisted us in making those artworks. And that's kind of how we do it. We are a full service team, so we have our own creatives. Our CEO is an ex-creative director, is so incredibly knowledgeable in that
Yeah.
space. Our graphic designer, Bella, is just phenomenal. Her eye for detail. So
Awesome.
we can.
Yeah.
But when it comes to artists, we just enhance them and make them
Yeah.
digitally viable.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool to hear that a Kiwi company is on the international stage with the likes of Wimbledon and the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Very cool.
Yeah, it's so funny because so many times people are like, well, why are you
Yeah.
going with a New Zealand company? And I think it's our ethos, it's
Yeah.
what we value. We kind of have an internal saying, it's like the glorious standard.
Yeah.
And whilst the market changes all the time, we continue to uphold our standard, which is nothing less than perfection with regards to the artwork, but also the royalties that our artists get. We got into this business, in particular Murray Tom, who comes from a music background, and Tim as well. They really respect artists and their income, and they completely understand that it's not easy to make a living through being creative.
Yeah.
And whilst, the Drakes of the world can get 5 billion streams on Spotify, if you're a new artist, the royalties off those streams is nothing. And so if we can create a revenue stream for them that gives them perpetual royalties and then their family perpetual royalties, that's what we want to uphold.
Awesome.
So whilst the likes of OpenSea have gone back on their promise to keep royalties on secondary sales, Glorious is saying, we will do that for the rest of our time. As long as we have a business, we will ensure that artists get paid.
That's awesome. And Glorious is quite new, right?
Yeah. So it was founded in 2021.
Yeah.
Tim Harper, Murray Tom, Dan Carter, and PwC head Scott McCleaver. So they founded it over kind of a joint love for art and Web3, and it kind of developed from there. And in 2023, we're kind of this fully fledged company with almost 20 employees, and it's just, it's so mad.
Yeah, because I recall in 2021, I think I heard Murray talking about an NFT business or something. And at that time, I mean, even now, I don't know much about NFTs, to be quite honest. But even at that time, I was like, whoa, like that's something new and not something you commonly hear. So it was really interesting. But it's so cool to see the way it's developed and, all the cool stuff you guys have achieved so far.
Absolutely. And I think it's because we really didn't follow, or they, I can't speak for them, but we didn't follow that kind of traditional route of really speculative artwork or something that just, people didn't feel like they wanted to keep. Most of the art that we're selling, people don't want to sell it on because it's so stunning, and they want to put it up on their wall or enjoy it or put it on their phone or share it with their friends and family. I think it's just a different perspective on the industry.
Awesome. So cool. So
cool.
So we've kind of touched on that you've done marketing, but what is your role? And what does that look like?
So I'm head of marketing. I was originally brought on as artist and brand manager, but as kind of the year progressed in 2022, I moved into the role of head of marketing. But as I'm sure many people know, when you work at a startup, you wear many different hats.
Yeah.
So I kind of straddle project management and marketing, particularly because when you're working with Wimbledon, they have their own marketing team and quite frankly, they've got millions of followers. So it makes my job really easy. But the flip side of that is the project management really comes into play. So Wimbledon's the perfect example of like the spectrum of my job, where we were working really closely with with Daylight, who created the artwork. We were working really closely with Wimbledon on the legalities of it all, their archival team, social media, the metadata that we have to put into it all. I mean, our tech team are just the best in the business, and I truly think that our tech are the best in the world. And so I work really closely with them to ensure that what we have putting out there is representative of the product that we're also displaying. So my role is marketing campaigns in a traditional sense, but it's also making sure that the story is told as to exactly what the product is as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Are you the only person in your marketing team?
So I also have Sam Tom. He does a lot of our socials and a lot of asset creation. But predominantly me. But we have, the support system from the graphic designer side and from Tim. We really kind of everyone supports everyone in each role, aside from tech.
But you kind of get to see in those small teams, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's very supportive and collaborative, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. We're very, very lucky.
Awesome. What did you do before you started at Glorious? You kind of touched on it a bit earlier.
So I started at Sony Music, 9 years ago, and I was at Sony for 4 years. So I was in music publicity. So I was PR, radio plugging, making sure, basically looking after artists every time they were in New Zealand. And then I moved into independent artist management with a company called Page One. So I helped manage writers, producers, and artists. So Broods, Joel Little, Jared James, and it was a phenomenal time, and I really learned a whole spectrum of skills from working in music, because from the Sony Music days, like the time zones and bringing in like high caliber artists, the Foo Fighters, One Direction, everyone that you would see, Harry Styles, coming in, looking after them to a really high standard. You can't just kind of chuck them in the back of the van and hope for the best. You have to really plan their whole trip and ensure that every single piece of media that they're doing is the best that they could possibly do. So that was incredible. And then from an artist management perspective, I really learned how to help build a career. So from artists who are just coming into their first sessions, their first recording sessions, all the way to Joel, who is a Grammy winning, producer, and working with him throughout the Taylor Swift times was just the most insightful and quite frankly high pressure environment, because you're working with Taylor Swift's team, and they they expect nothing less than the best. The attention to detail is just unreal. So I loved working with Ashley Page and that team, and the travel was awesome, just taking our artists to different places and ensuring that they were looked after in the best possible way, from doing their passport applications to ensuring that they got on stage on the right time, and tour management. I mean, the artist management side of things is a really diverse role. Yeah.
That's incredible. That's a lot.
Yeah. I think it, like working at Page One in a management team, there was 3 of us, at 1.4. But you wear all hats, from being, grabbing a coffee for my boss all the way to going to New York Fashion Week with Broods and making sure that they got photographed and looked after, Grammy nomination times, ensuring that Joel and Taylor's songs got into the right hands. And it was just such a broad spectrum of roles that, again, it was like, okay, I'm prepped for startup because I know now that you work all hours of the day. I mean, I'm not sure, this is so funny, but that Josh 685 song, Savage Love, that was like the biggest song on TikTok for 2020 and 2021. We managed him.
Oh, wow.
So we were doing 3 a.m. calls with the UK, because he was UK #1, he was US #1. That in itself during a global pandemic was like outrageous, So that was a really interesting time working with a young man who didn't want to be famous. Someone put his track on TikTok and it blew up overnight. So that was really, really interesting for
That's
sure.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
You certainly learn how to deal with a multitude of people.
That's amazing. Cool.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked in a co-working space before?
So funnily enough, when I read that question last year, so I went over to the UK to make sure that the Wimbledon release went well and spend some time with my family. And I actually tried out quite a few co-working spaces.
Oh, cool.
So I started with WeWork. Obviously, we've all seen the documentary. And I was like, oh, this is interesting, but it felt quite stale. And then I went to this beautiful little independent place in North Greenwich called Bureau. And the way that they designed it, the people that were within that co-working space was so cool. It was just cool. I had the best time there. The only thing that I was a bit, sad about was it was just me. So I didn't have a team, but I think it was such a cool little space to work in. And the architecture, the way it was designed was just, it was epic.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Because I personally didn't know much about co-working until I actually came to the Icehouse. So this is my first time being in a co-working space, but it's quite cool to hear that you've had other experiences.
Yeah. Well, this space here was the first one, but when I was in London, I really just wanted to be around other people.
Yeah.
You know, other people kind of just hustling, and you get that general energy, and it's a change of scenery from working in the corner of your flat, you know. So I really enjoyed it, but I think the Icehouse is just particularly having our team here and then knowing that our team is, you know, Murray Tom has been in this building for God knows how long.
Yes.
And he knows everyone. And coming in every day and just seeing all these different people is so cool.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that flows on nicely to my next question. What do you love most about our co-working space?
I love that there are so many different businesses within the space. So you know, from Tony, who is selling Manuka honey worldwide, all the way to Michael Prendergast, who's at Spork down the road, to Glorious, to Icehouse Ventures. It's all so interesting. Yeah. And whilst it's like, I love the Glorious team, when you go and make a coffee, you could just have any kind of conversation. So true. And I think over the last, 3 years, people have really had a time, the pandemic in Auckland, the flooding, and it's just nice to kind of check in with different people from different spaces and make sure that they're all okay.
Absolutely.
And the dogs, you know.
The dogs. Love the
dog.
dogs.
Maple, oh my gosh.
Maple
Shout out to Maple
cute.
the dog.
Yeah.
She's such an angel. I'm like, how are you so good?
Maple is so cute.
Yeah.
She just lays there. But she just looks like she's really having a nice time.
She just wants pats, 24/7 pats. And I'm like, I respect that 100%.
She's so cute.
She's awesome. And of course, we've got all of the other little dogs in. Shout out to those as well.
Yeah, and to the other dogs.
Yeah.
Who is one interesting person you've met from the space, and why were they interesting?
I mean, Tony from, I think it's Manuka Enterprises.
Yeah.
Emporium.
Yeah.
Manuka Emporium. He is just... I think there's 2 of them, and they are just doing amazing work. The fact that they're having meetings with the US, they're already in China. He's just, from his parents having a coffee shop on Ponsonby Road to starting your own business, being so independent, being the nicest person who genuinely takes interest in everybody that he speaks to. I just have so much respect for that. Yeah. He's so brave from going into that industry, which in New Zealand is pretty, saturated. Yeah. But I think his product's amazing, and he's definitely got a business mind. Yeah. I think it's really, and Tane, those guys with the security systems, it's really cool to see people starting their own projects where they're passionate about it, or they see a gap in the market. Yeah. I think that's the beauty of the Icehouse and the independents that are able to work here,
Yeah, I love that too, about the people.
Yeah.
Like you hear all these business names, but to really see the people behind it.
Yeah.
It just makes it real as well, and you
it's
realise
so
it's human.
Funny.
Yeah.
And they come in their shorts and t-shirts, but actually they're just like
so
innovators and pioneers. And I really...
Yeah.
I love that. I love the realness that the space brings,
Yeah. No, and I love asking that question because it's really interesting to hear from people's different perspective of why they thought someone was really interesting, and it's really cool. So, I love
and we're
that.
so lucky. I love the space. It's so cool.
Awesome. What has been a big win from your career journey so far, and what's a goal that you might have?
I think, just pulling off that first Wimbledon release was huge. And for our team, it was our first international release. We really just, it made me so proud, the support that we gave each other. And actually just going, I was working in London probably from about 4 a.m. in the morning till about midnight at night.
That's
for
insane.
a month or so. And, but everyone was like, are you okay? What do you need? And we pulled it off. We sold it. We sold out the Wimbledon's like first NFT release. It was just nuts. And it just showed that we can be working. I think at that time we were a team of like 10, maybe less. And we did it. And I think for me, just being able to say that I was a part of it, by no means was I, the lead, but all the way from kind of getting them across the line and trusting us to delivering this fantastic product, it will forever be a career highlight, 100%.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and I think the same kind of goes for this year. The Nelson Mandela Foundation is so important, what the work that they're doing, particularly in the space that we're in at the moment with leadership around the world being not that great, and what they're trying to do through dialogue and advocacy is huge. And if we can bring more people into that space just because we're doing it in a digital world, I hope that we can pull off what we're trying to do, which is just creating a community of like-minded individuals who want to see the foundation grow and succeed and bring more people together. So that's probably my next kind of big goal for Glorious.
That's really, really
cool. It's so cool.
The final question that I want to ask before we wrap up is, what excites you about the future of Glorious?
Glorious is led by, honestly, some of the most incredible businessmen I've ever met. I'm very lucky to call them my friends. And the conversations that we're having in 2023 and where this business could go is just, it's stratospheric. Like, it truly is. Like, anything is possible. And I love the mindset, you know, and I love the true creativity of the leaders. We're not trying to develop a product that is been seen before. We're innovating. We're constantly getting better at our craft. We're always trying to look at it from a different angle. And one thing that's really special about Glorious is that when we go into a conversation with a company like Wimbledon, we want to look after your brand. We don't want to put you into a space where you're in danger, or, you know, you're not being represented to the true power that you should be. Wimbledon is a brand that has been going, it's been here for 120 years. And so for them to entrust us with that is huge. And that's the same for so many other companies that we're working with. And I love the fact that we're going, what about this? This is a really cool idea that stays within your brand guidelines, but pushes the boundaries slightly so that you can reach a whole other wealth of people and grow and connect. And I think I can't talk to everything that we're doing, but it's just, the possibilities are endless. And I can't, like, you know, in a year's time, in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time, I know that the company will be completely different to what it is now, but because of the leaders that we have, it will be still in a fantastic place, you know.
I'm excited to see what you guys get up to.
We'll have to check back in.
Yeah, we'll have to check back in 5 years, wherever we are.
Yeah, we're probably still in the Icehouse.
Yeah, we'll be here.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and sharing about yourself and Glorious, and just having a chat. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun to kind of reflect and talk about the company and me. Yeah, thank you.